Welcome back to Class Valuation's new hire training series on appraisal report writing. The intent is to guide a real estate appraiser, a user of appraisal services like an employee at a lender or an appraisal management company, or for that matter, any other reader of an appraisal report through the form. Before we get started, if you're not already a subscriber to the Class Valuation channel, consider subscribing. It helps the channel out and you'll be alerted to the availability of new content. We appreciate your support, and if you like this video, please remember to smash that like button. Welcome to the neighborhood. This is the section of the 1004 form that allows the appraiser to describe the neighborhood characteristics and the trends that influence the value of 1 to 4 unit residential properties. Therefore, an analysis of the subject property's neighborhood is a key element in the appraisal process. All appraisals completed for traditional lending purposes must be written in compliance with fair housing. All properties in all neighborhoods are considered as long as the property is acceptable as security for the mortgage based on its value and marketability. The Fair Housing Act was passed in 1968 and it has been amended several times. The Act makes it illegal to discriminate in the sale or rental of housing, including against individuals seeking a mortgage or housing assistance or any other housing-related activity. The Fair Housing Act prohibits this discrimination because of race, color, national origin, religion, sex, familial status, and disability. It should also be noted that in some municipalities, other protected classes have been added, such as sexual orientation. Race and racial composition of the neighborhood are not appraisal factors. Appraisers take this statement made in the neighborhood section very seriously. They are required to perform an objective neighborhood analysis, being mindful to let the property's market speak to them over any personal perception. The appraiser signs a certification that actually prohibits the appraiser from basing their opinion of value on the protected classes noted in the Fair Housing Act. USPAP actually goes a step further by stating that the appraiser must perform all assignments with impartiality, objectivity, and independence without accommodation of personal interests. This means the appraiser must perform without bias and cannot advocate the cause or interest of any party or issue. Additionally, the appraiser is also prohibited from using verbiage that could be construed as discriminatory, and those problematic words and phrases, they're outlined by FHA, the GSEs, FHA, and other market participants who share them publicly. So just what is a neighborhood when it is viewed from the appraiser's perspective, and why is the appraiser even concerned with it? The appraiser is required to perform a neighborhood analysis, which includes the identification of the area based on common characteristics and trends that are subject to the same influences as the subject property. Think of your own neighborhood and what you find in it. How would you define it and decide on what its boundaries are? The appraiser must think the same way and be familiar enough with the area to decide what the boundaries are and from which to select the comparables from. There is no predefined size for the neighborhood. In one report, it could be a very small area, while in another, it could be hundreds of square miles in size. A neighborhood consists of various uses: residential, single-family, and multifamily, commercial, retail, office, industrial, special uses such as hospitals, schools, and airports, vacant land, individual lots or residential lots, parks, national forests, and reservations. And they are also defined by physical characteristics, such as a river, a mountain range, a railroad track, interstate highways, or other major traffic arterials. From this neighborhood analysis, conclusions in many other areas of the appraisal will be based. The neighborhood section of the 1004 form is broken down into 7 sections. These various sections will be discussed briefly. The important thing to know is that on each line, only one box should be selected, or other appropriate data should be in the box. Defining the neighborhood helps the appraiser understand market preferences and price patterns, the effective locations within the neighborhood, and various influences in the area, such as land uses or any other influence that might affect the neighborhood. This analysis is a strong contributor to the analysis of the highest and best use of the subject property. The neighborhood characteristics portion of the neighborhood section helps the appraiser communicate those characteristics, such as type of location, the percentage built up, and the rate of growth, and applies that to the entire neighborhood. Again, as noted, only one box should be checked going across for each category. On the location line, the appraiser identifies the neighborhood as either urban, suburban, or rural. These classifications describe the density of the area. An urban area is within a city or town. A more outlying area between the city is identified as suburban. In the country, we would consider that to be rural. The reason it is important for the type of location to be identified is it may impact the availability of comparable sales. Most of the time, urban areas have a higher number of available sales and listings, given the fact that there are simply more homes in the area. Typically, the more distance from a metropolitan area, the fewer sales to choose from, with rural tending to have the least amount available. For this reason, it is accepted that in more remote areas, the comparables may be more distant from the subject. Built up is defined as the degree of development of a neighborhood, which is the percentage of available land in the neighborhood that has been improved. The built up line tends to follow along with the urban, suburban, and rural locations, and the more remote areas are less built up. Here, as already noted, only one box should be selected. The term growth is defined in appraisal speak to be the rate at which the area is building up with improvements. The growth of an area can also be influenced by its location. More established areas tend to have slow to stable growth, and newer areas tend to have rapid growth. The one-unit housing trends are submarket specific. That is, they apply only to the neighborhood properties that are comparable to the subject property. The one-unit housing trends serve as the primary indicators of market condition for properties in the subject neighborhood as of the effective date of the appraisal by noting the information in the table below. The entries in this section should be consistent with the conclusions reached in the 1004 MC Market Conditions Addendum if used, or at least consistent with the market conditions reported elsewhere in the report. Now, the report must provide a detailed explanation of the trends, and since the 1004 MC is no longer required by the GSEs or FHA, it may be included somewhere in the addendum of the appraisal report. The property values line helps to describe any changes in property values in the area. The value trend in the neighborhood is important, especially when it's fluctuating. When completing the one-unit housing trends portion of the neighborhood section of the appraisal report form, the trends must be reflective of those properties deemed to be competitive to the property being appraised. Now, there is often a requirement by lenders to include 2 active listings or pending sales in an appraisal when the property value trends are not stable. If the trend is not stable, it's a good indicator that an adjustment for the date of sale may be warranted for the comparables identified in the sales comparison approach. Demand and supply. Demand simply refers to the balance between the number of houses sold and the number of new listings available for sale. It does not refer to market activity. So one market may have 50 sales and 50 new listings, while another market may only have 5 sales and 5 listings in that same time period. Both would actually be considered as in balance because the number of listings equal the number of sales. Marketing time is the average time a similar property in the same market will take to sell when it's offered at a price close to market value. Again, as noted, only one box for each line should be checked. Price and age range apply to whatever property type is being appraised in the form on which you are reporting your assignment results. This section allows the appraiser to show the relationship between one-unit housing price and age in the subject's neighborhood. The price range must reflect high and low prevailing prices for one-unit properties, Isolated high and low extremes should be excluded from the range, which means that the predominant price will be that which is the most common or most frequently found in the neighborhood. The appraiser must state the predominant price and provide a comment elsewhere in the report if the subject's conclusion of value varies significantly from the predominant price. The age ranges should also reflect the oldest and newest ages for similar types of residential properties, in this case, one-unit housing. As with the price range, the outlier properties should be excluded from the range. The predominant age is the one that is the most common or frequently found in the neighborhood. In each of the cells in this section, whole numbers should be inserted and all cells should be filled out. The present land use section applies to the entire neighborhood and communicates the present land uses in the area. These classifications are also consistent with the definition of a neighborhood, which can include uses other than homes. The zoning map for an area may provide a good indication of these percentages, as well as a drive-around inspection by the appraiser if they're not already familiar with the area. Reporting of the percentage of land use helps to provide an idea to the reader of the report if the neighborhood has similar residential uses to the subject property. Values are best maintained when a home is situated in a neighborhood that consists of other similar dwellings. The total of the present land use percentages must add up to 100%. When there is no percentage of a specific land use, a zero or dash should be entered. The other classification is typically used for vacant land, but should also be used for other unspecified classifications such as parks, reservations, or airports. The type of other is always required to be explained elsewhere in the appraisal. In each of the cells in this section, whole numbers should be inserted and all cells should be filled out. The neighborhood boundaries also apply to the entire neighborhood, and this section provides the location of the neighborhood, the boundaries selected determine its size, and what it consists of. The appraiser is required to show where the subject property is in relation to the neighborhood. The boundaries can be a variety of things and do not have to be all streets. They're determined by change in the land use, and an appraiser must be careful, because of fair housing laws, to not determine a neighborhood based on any of the protected classes. Now, other than major traffic streets, other examples of neighborhood boundaries may be a physical barrier, such as a mountain range, a lake or river, or some sort of change in the land use, such as from residential to commercial or industrial. It is required all four directions be reported using their names. Page 1 should have the words north, south, east, and west within the boundary box and a name of the boundary provided for each. Underwriters expect the subject to fall within the boundaries the appraiser has defined, as well as the comparable sales utilized in this sales comparison approach. Now, if the comparables are outside of the defined neighborhood boundaries, a comment should be provided elsewhere in the appraisal. This is okay, as in some cases an appraiser might have to consider a different area that would appeal to the same buyer group as the subject's neighborhood, such as in the case of a lack of comparable sales. In some cases, appraisers will continue the neighborhood boundaries in the addendum to the appraisal, which is okay, again, as long as all four directions are established within a named boundary. The neighborhood description provides a space for the appraiser to add additional information about the neighborhood that may need further commentary from the sections above, or to expand with details about the area. There is no predetermined information that must be in this section. Some appraisers will also expand the commentary from this section over to the addendum of the appraisal. Again, appraisers should be careful about the fair housing rules when adding comments to this section. This is a section for you to be mindful of as well, and keep an eye out for verbiage, problematic words or phrases that could be construed as inappropriate towards fair housing laws. Per Scott Reuter, the single-family chief appraisal officer for Freddie Mac, much of the problematic languages we're seeing in reports is not helpful and is simply not necessary to develop an accurate valuation. So, for example, Scott says it's difficult to determine the meaning of a subjective term like desirable or attractive. These terms are meaningless to the development of an appraisal report. If there are characteristics or features or area amenities that potential buyers would find of value, appraisers can describe the facts around those elements. For example, instead of saying a subject property is convenient to or within walking distance of a local school, it would be more factual to say an elementary school is located a tenth of a mile from the subject. This gives the reader the facts and eliminates the perception that the appraiser is offering an opinion about convenience or walkability that may not apply to all potential homeowners. Market conditions apply to the entire neighborhood. If the neighborhood is segmented, the focus of the summary should be on the subject market segment, but also include commentary on other market segments. If the neighborhood is not segmented, the summary of the analysis would default to the entire neighborhood. The section allows the appraiser to support the statement about the neighborhood that was provided in the sections above. Typical commentary will include comments on the trend of property values, demand and supply, and typical marketing times, all of which provides more detail than the simple boxes checked above. All the above components of the neighborhood section serve to alert the reader of the appraisal as to what will be coming further in the appraisal report. For example, the increasing box checked in the one-unit housing trends box may signal that an adjustment for the date of sale in the sales comparison approach is likely. Or if the shortage box is checked for demand and supply, there may be a lack of listings and that appraiser may not be able to include any. This is all done in an effort to tell the right story. Today's video could not be possible without the use of these trusted sources. We encourage you to view the remaining videos in this series. And don't forget, if you're not already a subscriber to the Class Valuation channel, consider subscribing. And if you like this video, please remember to smash that like button. Thank you for taking the time to check this video out, and have a great day.